The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer. Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, we have Susan Hoffland joining us. Susan has a Bachelor's of Science in Nutrition from the University of California at Davis. She is a licensed practical nurse, a certified nutrition therapy practitioner. She is certified in nutrition response testing and has completed coursework in integrative manual therapy. Susan is also the owner of Susan Hoffland Restorative Nutritional Therapy. Welcome, Susan, to the Naturally Inspired Podcast. Thank you so much, Susan, for being on the Naturally Inspired Podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Tammy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. You do some interesting things in your line of work, and I can't wait for everyone to learn about them.
Well, thank you.
So let's get started and get our audience acquainted with you.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? Where do you live now? Do you have any kiddos? All that kind of stuff.
Okay. I am a Navy brat. So I was born in Japan on a military base out there called Yokosuka Naval Air Station. I currently live in Longmont, Colorado. And I am married with 3 adult children. 30, who's my oldest daughter, Rebecca, is married to Greg. And I have a 8-year-old son, Christopher, and a 24-year-old daughter, Heidi.
Nice. So you made it through the teenage years.
We made it through the teenage years. Yes.
And you're still going.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's still little bumps in the road, but yeah, all in all, I think the worst part is over. So
that's wonderful.
Not that it's bad. I love my children. So.
Yeah. No, I really don't have it bad. I really kid, but I have a 16 and a 14-year-old.
Oh,
so
you are thick in the middle of it.
I'm in the thick in the middle of teenager. Yeah. But I mean, knock on wood, they don't give me much trouble, but it's definitely different, right? When they hit that point, it's so much, I think it's harder on me than anybody, just because they're growing up and it's so hard.
It's a different busy, right? Little kids are like a physical sleep deprivation.
Right.
Older kids are more of an emotional kind of mental kind of
worry type, out with the car, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Do you have any grandchildren yet?
Not yet.
Oh, no pressure.
No pressure. No pressure.
They'll hear this. No pressure.
Yeah.
So tell us, Susan, how did you get started in natural health?
Yes. So my original Bachelor of Science was in nutrition. I went to UC Davis back in California. And so I have always loved the human body and how it works and the science behind it. But by the time I completed my my bachelor's, it was kind of a rough couple years in there because my mother had died halfway through. So I was still doing quite a bit of grieving, and I just wasn't in a mental place to go on to get my RD, which is a registered dietitian.
Right.
But so then, and then I got married straight out of college. And so we moved to where my husband got a job. He's an engineer, which was down to Silicon Valley. And I kind of did some, temporary work and stuff in, some of the high tech industry and things like that. And then I got pregnant a couple years later, and then decided I wanted to stay home with the kids, and then I ended up having 3 kids. So
I stayed home too.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not for everybody, but it was the right decision for me, and sounds like you. But
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
yes. So then, when my son was 11, he got lymphoma, and which really kind of threw me, came out of left field really for me. I thought I was doing all the right things in terms of feeding him, and I was natural, and I was, you know, I don't know. There was just a lot of parent guilt around that, which is
Right.
mommy guilt, which I'm sure you can understand. Um,
Sure.
but I remember asking the oncologist, like, what causes this? Is it what I've been feeding him? And he just kind of laughed at me and said, if we knew the answer to that question, we would all be out of a job, which I wish
Right.
they were all out of jobs. But,
Yeah.
you
No
know, the,
kidding.
the reality is they aren't.
Right.
So through the next several years, a very difficult, really 4-year process, both physically getting him through chemo, and then also dealing with the emotional aftermath of
Absolutely.
an 11-year-old boy going through chemo. When I felt like my family was more stable, I decided to go to nursing school. So I got my LPN through Front Range, and the way they worked was you get the LPN, you work clinically for a while, then you get your RN. Um,
Right.
so I got the LPN, and I worked for Kaiser for about 5 years on their float pool, um, going all up and down the Front Range in
Hmm.
across multiple, not only clinics but specialties and stuff. So I kind
Okay.
of
So you're seeing all kinds of people.
all kinds of people, kind of a jack of all trades, king of none.
Right. Okay.
Um,
That's a good
so
way to learn about whether you want to be in this field or not.
yes, it was a very good way to learn. And this is what I learned by doing that. I learned that the traditional allopathic model, which is Western medicine, is excellent at some things, which is acute care mostly.
Right.
That's where they shine. Um, what I noticed was that in terms of chronic care, caring for diseased patients,
Hmm.
they know how to manage a disease so that
Right.
it doesn't kill ultimately. Well, generally it ultimately kills them, but they manage the symptoms
Right.
basically. But people really didn't get better. What I noticed was the same people coming in, they either were getting worse or maybe staying the same depending on their lifestyle management skills.
Okay.
And the other thing I noticed was that a lot of these doctors, practitioners really didn't know the first thing about nutrition. And, that was just
Right.
really, yeah, as I would be in a room with a patient and a doctor and hear some of this advice, I was appalled, honestly,
Is that because when your son got sick, you kind of dove into it a bit more about what he was eating and stuff? Or where did your exposure come from?
It came from my Bachelor of Science in nutrition. Okay.
Okay.
So, and honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of time to dive into it when my kid was sick.
I
That
bet.
was a time of just stay afloat kind of
Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine.
the eyeballs goes in the water and get through.
Right.
But anyway, so all of this started to come to me. And then I got into RN school, and I was in my second semester, and I had a fortuitous fall where I hit my head on the crossbeam of a stainless steel crib and got a doozy of a concussion. And I think
Wow.
it's just God's way of getting my attention, because often it takes a 2x4. um, and so I hung in there about 6 weeks trying to stay in, but I wasn't recovering. I wasn't getting better. And then it got to the point where I was putting myself and my patients at risk, and I really needed to quit. So,
That must have been a really hard decision
oh, yes, very
because you're
hard.
committed to this program and
I
you're
am
in that field already. Ah,
I'm
pressure.
working toward this. Many tears. And yes,
Yeah.
my husband, bless his heart, listening to my whining and moaning. But ultimately, I quit and then had a big sense of peace about it. But that's
Nice.
when I really started to start delving into this. Now, what do I do now? I
Right.
feel like I've been going X direction, and now I'm doing a complete about face, and I'm going to go somewhere else. What is this all about? So
Right.
concurring to that, I have had multiple health problems since I can remember growing up. Lots of ear infections,
Ah.
um, strep throat, things like that growing up.
Hmm.
I think some of it was military oriented with being on, frankly, toxic military bases. And then lots and lots of, regardless of what your stance on vaccinations, are lots and lots of vaccinations, more than most kids my age, because
Hmm.
I was going back and forth to um, different countries.
Right. Okay.
So, um, and then I don't know, I seem to sort of, cruise along there for a while.
What
And then,
kinds of health problems were you experiencing? Was it tummy problems or headaches
yeah,
or?
lots of tummy problems and, bouts of diarrhea versus constipation,
Okay.
just pain, overall gut pain, that kind of a
Mm.
thing. Um, as I look back in hindsight, depression, even though I didn't
Yeah.
realize it then. Um, got sick a lot, things like that. Okay.
Right. Okay.
And then a lot of menstrual, PMS kind of stuff too at that point. And those were all just early signs,
Right.
I believe. And that's when I was young.
Right.
And weight, the weight, in spite of being a very active person, the weight would just start piling on.
Okay.
Um, So then in my 30s, things just started to ramp up. And,
Right.
I would go into the doctor, cholesterol's up, blood sugar's a little up, blood pressure's a little up, all this kind of metabolic syndrome basically is
Right.
the early signs of that, which runs in my dad's side of my family. And then once my son got sick and the stress hit, the
Yes.
big time stress hit,
Yeah.
then kind of all went to pot at
Right.
that point. So
Right.
then I had my gallbladder out. Then I had my appendix out.
Oh my goodness.
And then I tore my right rotator cuff, but that was kind of silly. I was doing cartwheels.
Oh
And then,
no.
yeah, but I could still do one, darn it. um, and then, later on, I had, not endometriosis, but something called adenomyosis, where the tissue digs into like the muscular wall of the uterus, and it's very painful. And then I got fibroids. So then I got a hysterectomy. I had several sinus surgeries, all this
Oh my goodness.
before I really started, holy cow, what is going on with me? And every
Yeah.
doctor I went to just wanted to give me pills or do another surgery.
Right.
And then, so finally, I was just like, enough of this. I'm done.
Right.
Um, so I started looking for alternative care. And I eventually found somebody who does nutrition response testing, which is what I do.
Yeah.
Um, and I have by far made the biggest improvement doing that. Um,
Wow. That's
so
incredible.
it is incredible. I ended up on antidepressants once my son got sick, at 60 milligrams. As of 2 weeks ago, I finally went off my medication. It took 5.5
Wow.
years, but I am off that medication. So, and my brain feels great. My mood is good, normal,
Yeah.
stuff things can happen. Of course I get sad, but I
Right.
bounce back. I'm not just sitting on the couch staring out the window for
Right.
hours
So
anymore.
how many years were you on the medication for?
20.
Wow.
Right. So, the longer you're on that medication, the harder it is to get off of it. So,
Absolutely.
5 years of dedicated work on my part to get off of that. But I'm off.
Wow.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah. So then all my numbers started going up even more, right? So then I'm pre-diabetic, I'm this, I'm that,
And this is all
So
in your 30s.
all in my 30s and early 40s. And then I started seeing my practitioner, and then all of this is starting to be reversed. So I'm no
Wow.
longer pre-diabetic. I'm cholesterol levels that's a whole nother subject,
Yeah.
exactly what that means, and is that a bad thing or not? But
Right.
they're higher than the doctors like to see, but
Uh-huh.
I don't have a problem with it. Um, so I'm still, working on my health. It's definitely a process.
Yeah.
But when I look at myself compared to 5 years ago, it's night and day difference.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing. And good for you for searching out alternative care because I think a lot of people get stuck in this box where, they go to this doctor, they go to that, and they're not really getting answers.
exactly.
But they don't know where else to go.
Exactly. And the doctors, bless their hearts, they're doing what they know how to do.
They are.
That's how I was trained, right?
Yes,
So, and they really do care and they really want to help, but they're misguided in a
that's
lot,
right.
you
If
know.
Yeah, I think somebody said the other day on the podcast, if all you have is a hammer as your tool, then you know how to hammer things.
Exactly. And
And that's
everything looks like a nail, right?
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
But it
Yeah,
takes a little courage to step outside your box and to kind of, start doing your own research and figure out where you might be able to get alternative help.
it
Yeah,
does. Yeah. And it's kind of scary, sometimes the devil is better than the devil you don't. But
right.
but it's a really important process to go through. I've learned so much about all of this, and I thought I knew quite a bit as, somebody who had a degree in nutrition and then nursing and everything,
Right.
and it was just amazing what I didn't know. And you don't know what you don't know until you
Right.
start looking for what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I'm sure there's lots more I don't know that I will continue to learn. But
Yeah, well, that's the beautiful part too about functional medicine and attacking it from this place is you're a detective.
yes,
I mean, your health is your case, so to speak,
yes,
and
yes,
you're constantly working as a detective to figure out, oh, why is my body trying to tell me that? Oh,
mm,
why is my body trying to tell me that? And you just don't get that opportunity in allopathic medicine,
right, right,
right? You
yes,
just kind of have 10 minutes to, this is what's going on. Oh, you're probably just like everybody else. So here's this.
right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so that was really, as I went back in one day after I dropped out of school, seeing my practitioner, and I was just kind of bemoaning the fact that I had to drop out of school. I was just like, well, now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And she just looked at me and went, well, you could do this.
Yeah.
And I was just like, light bulb. Oh my
Right.
goodness, yes, I can do this. So,
Right.
so
So you've
then
gone to restorative nutritional therapy.
restorative nutrition therapy is the name of my business. Um, what I am is a nutrition therapy practitioner.
Okay.
Okay. That's kind of a certification I got through kind of one, uh, organization. And then learned nutrition response testing, which is the modality I use to apply the nutrition knowledge.
Okay. Okay.
So, one of the frustrating things about nutrition when I got out, and one of the reasons I didn't want to go on for my RD is I just felt, talking to other people too, I just felt like, so you get this knowledge. Now, what do you do with it? How do you implement it on
Right.
people to help them get better? I knew studying it that it was powerful, so very powerful. Um, but in a lot of ways, the allopathic community kind of cut you off at the knees and they don't let you practice things that you would otherwise do. And you end up managing food or whatever in a clinic
Right.
setting or something like that. And that was
Right.
definitely not what I wanted to do. So,
Right.
so I didn't do that, which is good.
Yeah.
So this is how it was kind of a long, winding story, but which is the case for most people, but this is how
Yeah.
I ended up where I'm at. And today I feel like I help people way more than I ever did as a nurse. So I am, I am just thrilled to be in my shoes today.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's so
Yeah.
wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me more about the course that you took for the nutrition therapy. So were they teaching you how what were they teaching you more about the foods or how people react to the foods or what were they teaching
Yes.
you?
So Originally, I went to the Nutrition Therapy Association, which was a nice, it was a nice refresher course of nutrition, the science of nutrition that I learned with my BS, but it had been so many years. It was nice to get the refresher.
Right.
And they used a modality called neurolingual testing that
Oh, okay.
I felt was very cumbersome, and I just didn't like it.
Okay.
So then I went to Ullin Nutritional Systems in Clearwater, Florida, which is where I learned nutrition response testing. And nutrition response testing is we utilize muscle testing, which is a part of applied kinesiology.
Right.
Um, and we use that to communicate with the body, so to speak, on
Okay.
where the imbalances are and what the body needs in way of cleaning things up. So we get exposed to lots of things in this world we live in. um, some of them we have control over, some we don't.
Right.
But things like viruses, bacteria, fungus, parasites, heavy metals, chemicals, food,
Right. Mm-hmm.
are the big one. So I try to figure out what kinds of things are impeding, say the liver. Say the liver's not doing well. What kinds of things are impeding the health of that liver? And then I would
Okay.
clean that up using the muscle testing.
Right. So when you
And
say muscle testing, what
Mhm.
you're doing is you're looking for the muscle to respond in a certain way to let you know if this particular um, nutritional food or supplement or whatever would be a good thing or a bad thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So the way I describe muscle testing for people is what I'm doing is tapping into the autonomic nervous system. Okay.
Okay.
The autonomic nervous system is what controls everything in the body we don't think about. Okay. So it'll control things like how many times a minute your heart pumps, or how many breaths a minute you take, your
Okay.
digestion, immune system, things like this. Okay.
Okay.
And so I like to compare it to like the process of hypothermia in the body. So if you were to fall into a lake in the middle of January up in the mountains, okay,
Yes.
there are sensors and all over the body that cue in the autonomic nervous system to say, whoa, very cold,
Right.
we'll die if we don't start doing something here. Okay.
Right.
So what your body does is it starts moving the blood and the energy away from the extremities to the vital organs, the core of your body, um, to save your life. It's a protective mechanism, right?
Okay.
But that's why
And
people lose fingers and toes, things like that,
right.
right? From
Okay. Hypothermia.
Yep. So in the same way, I can ask someone to hold up an arm or whatever muscle I choose to use. Say somebody is a paraplegic or, doesn't have an arm, I can use different muscles. But
Okay.
so I can ask them to hold up a muscle and resist my pressure.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And as long as they're neurologically intact, they can do that
Right.
most of the time. And then, so they can keep that arm strong. Okay.
Right.
But if I start poking around on different parts of the body, mostly organ systems, so let's take the liver again. If I poke
Okay.
on the liver, and that liver is in any way not working optimally, I'm doing
Yeah.
no diagnosing here. Okay.
Right.
So I just provide a little bit of ischemia or a little blood loss to that organ. Okay.
Okay.
Then what the autonomic nervous system is going to do is say, well, this liver already is not functioning very well. I'm not going to spare energy to keep an arm up, but I
Ah,
need this energy here because this liver is way more important than holding an
and
arm up.
arm up.
Okay. This
Okay.
arm will go weak. So it's not a muscular, it's not a how strong I am or anything. I can do this to these 300-pound men who could probably take me and whip me around,
Right.
Um,
Right.
and they'll just kind of look at me and go, oh my gosh, what just happened? Right. But it's
Right.
all the body cluing in and going, no, something's going on here. Okay. So that just tells me, okay, something's up with the liver. Okay. So
Okay.
I can do a scan of the entire body, including whatever it happens to be bothering you. If it's like, oh, my right knee is just, something's up with that, or my low back, or whatever.
Wow.
So including endocrine points and all that kind of stuff. So then I can kind of narrow it down to like a priority, like kind of like what's screaming the loudest in the
Right.
background, kind of like Donkey and Shrek, pick me right here,
Right.
and that's where I start working.
Okay.
And then I will start to see, okay, are any of these other things that I had talked about, like the viruses and all that kind of stuff, are there things in there that are impeding progress of this organ? If so, what can I give the body in terms of raw materials, which I believe nutrition is the raw material,
Right.
to help the body clear it out?
Got
Okay.
it.
And so all of this is done by muscle testing. And then, does that particular organ, say the liver, need a little help with, um, rebuilding tissue in some way? I can muscle test to see, about giving them things like that.
So
And
you
then
just keep asking
I
questions.
keep asking these questions, asking these questions. The body knows it's way smarter than I'll ever be.
Right.
Um, so then I end up building this program to kind of address all these needs in the body.
Uh-huh.
And then we put the patient on that. And then we start looking at how they eat. Okay. And
Okay.
in the meantime, I'm also looking at, okay, are there any foods that are compromising this as well? And it could
Right.
be even a healthy food. I've seen
Right.
a couple people who don't do well with avocado. Well,
Right.
avocado is a very healthy food, but some
Right.
people's bodies just don't like avocado.
Right. This
My
is really
body,
a common theme today that I think
yes,
everybody needs to grasp is
yes.
that there is not one diet for every person.
Exactly.
You
The
know?
keto diet is not going to save the world. This is not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So,
think
so
that's
then,
really, really important. So I'm glad you said that.
yeah. So then I craft a diet that's perfect for that person.
Person.
Okay.
Okay.
And then we start looking at how they eat. They do food journals. And then we just, at a very low gradient, just small steps, because I don't want somebody going, I can't do that, and running
Right.
out the door. We take
Right.
little steps that they can manage and they feel comfortable with to start
Yeah.
improving how they eat.
Yeah.
And then in the meantime, we're letting the supplements, which are really meant to be something that gets you over the hump to heal
Right.
you, um, do the work to heal you. And the diet's really meant to keep you going for the rest of your life.
Right.
But the supplements are in a dosage that there's just no way you could eat that much on your plate.
Right.
Okay.
Right. We're
So
finding
that's
it harder and harder to get concentrated amounts of nutrients when we're
exactly.
dealing with depleted soil and dealing with all of this, um,
Yeah.
outside environmental exposure to things. It's
Hmm.
getting really hard.
It is. It's very hard. So that is the purpose of the supplements.
What kinds of things do you help people with in your practice? Who comes to see you?
You know what? I really, this is not a cop out, but I really kind of see the gamut,
Yeah.
because what I'm doing is talking to the body, and the body tells me what the problem is. It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter what the problem is, and it doesn't really matter what the diagnosis is.
Right.
They come in with a diagnosis.
Yes. Labels.
Right. Where that helps me is because I do have a medical background too, then I can kind of, and I know some pathophysiology on what goes on with this stuff. It kind of gives me a little more advantage on where to look,
Right.
what kinds of things or what kind of supplements to pull, because I know that, when somebody's diabetic, they go through, their body uses an extra amount of chromium. So maybe they need some extra chromium or something like that.
Right.
So that's where that kind of knowledge helps me figure out kind of how best to pull stuff to help them.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
you're running the gamut. Are you seeing people with any mental health concerns?
Yes. And that is, if invariably, if somebody's got gut problems, they've got mental health problems. There
Yeah.
is a direct link between the gut and the brain.
Right.
So whether it be depression, anxiety, some OCD stuff or whatever,
Right.
I see things, have some people come in here just like, I just want a tweaking. I think I do pretty well, but could you just help me just kind of get back on the right path and up
Right.
up my game a little bit?
Yeah.
Great. happy to do that. All the way to people who come in with active disease processes. They've got they got 3 autoimmune diseases.
Right.
They just had cancer and they're trying to recover, or,
Right.
hives, or lots of hormonal issues,
Yes.
diabetes up the yazoo,
Yeah.
all this stuff. And I can see from a baby, an infant, all the way up to um, older age. So
Wonderful.
yeah, so I kind of see the gamut, heart problems, all this stuff. Hmm.
Wow, that's incredible. So you mentioned heart problems, and I know that you have a very valuable instrument that I want to get to talking to because it's so fascinating to me. And I actually did a poll on my Instagram a couple of weeks back about people wanting information on different topics.
Hmm.
And actually, heart health was at the top of the list. People
Hmm.
are really want to know how they can be proactive and have a good strong heart, of course, because without your heart, well, where are you? Right, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
But overwhelmingly so, I was pretty surprised how much people were wanting information on heart. So tell us about this. You have a medical device that you use within your practice. Tell us
Yes,
about it.
yes. So it's actually just a software program, okay?
Okay.
And there's really nothing like it out there. It's called the Heart Sound Recorder. It's being put out by Standard Process. Maybe you've heard of Standard Process, maybe not. It's kind of the gold standard of supplements. They just celebrated their 125th anniversary or something,
Okay.
and so so the original founder developer of this was Royal Lee, who is the founder of Standard Process. And back in the day, when he was having such great success with his supplements in reversing so many disease processes, the FDA really clamped down on him, obviously because he's taken business away from not only big pharma but medical, and they
Right.
did not like that. Okay,
Right.
so he developed this thing too, and was having great results with heart health, and the FDA gave him the recorder, and he opted for the supplements. And so he had to drop the heart sound recorder. And just recently, they've been able to develop it enough so that it can be a software program and it works effectively the way they were looking for it to work. So it used
Okay.
to be this big old cumbersome machine that, So what it is it's a highly sensitive sensor, and it picks up the 4 valves of the heart. Okay.
Okay.
And so many of the problems with heart actually start with the valves. There can be other things too, but a lot of times it's the valves. Okay. So what it'll do is it'll pop up on the computer screen, the heart rhythm, much like you would see on an EKG.
Right.
And
That's the bleep, 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 bleep that we see on.
your love and your dub and your love dub and that kind of thing. And there should be a pattern to it, a normal one.
Okay.
Um, So by looking at that, based upon what it looks like, what it's not doing, all this kind of stuff,
Uh-huh.
we know that there are certain nutrients that go into that the heart uses to do its job. Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we can tell based upon the patterns what kinds of things that person might need. And the
Okay.
incredible thing about it is that I can put this up on the screen for the patient to see. Okay,
Right.
take a snapshot recording of it, right?
Right.
And then I can have them chew a supplement that I think, say like a B complex or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And within 10 minutes, they have to chew it. It doesn't taste good, okay? And they don't always have to chew it, but for the purpose of seeing a quick result, we want the product to be masticated and start to be absorbed into the mucous membranes. It hits the bloodstream faster than if you were to just swallow it, and it goes
Right.
through the liver and that whole process.
Okay.
But within 10 minutes, we can start to see changes on that heart sound recorder. So I could
Wow.
do before and an after and show the patient what it looks like.
Right.
So what I do with it then is I start, it could be, a list of 3 or 4 things that might potentially help this person. That's where I
Mhm.
pull in my muscle testing to see what might be perfect for this particular person.
Right.
So, and then I will construct a little program for them to get on for the next several weeks. And then we meet together, once a week, twice a week, whatever I see is necessary, depending on how maybe bad things are looking for their heart.
Right.
And we tweak the program a little bit, and then it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. What an interesting way too, because I know that like some people um, think that, oh, supplements don't work,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, vitamins don't work. I don't need vitamins. But for them to be able to see
See. Yeah.
as they're absorbing it that it's having an effect, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother topic too.
Yeah.
Why the studies say they don't work and all that kind of stuff too. But that has much more to do with the gut than
Yes.
anything else. And that's
Right.
another reason why you want people to chew it, because if they're having gut problems,
They won't be able to
it's going
absorb
to go
it.
directly into the bloodstream that way instead of through the gut and that kind of.
Right.
But
So
yeah.
who's a good candidate for the sound recorder? Is this
So
something we want to do just if we're already healthy and we just kind of want to know where we're at? Or
yes, absolutely. It could be anyone like that who's wants to know, well, what is my heart doing? After all, you only have one, and if it
yeah.
goes, you don't have a second chance.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
we get. I mean, how many other preventative things do we do? We get a colonoscopy to make sure
Yeah.
that's clean. We get, mammograms. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. But we do different things to
Preventative
make
care.
sure that we're doing okay.
Yeah.
This would be much like that as well for most
Right.
people, right?
Right.
And then there are people who think they're fit, say they're big, exercisers, they look fit on the outside, all that kind of stuff. But how many times do you hear these stories where somebody's been out on a run and then they come home and drop dead from a heart attack?
Right.
Nobody knew this was coming,
Right.
completely out of the blue. And
Right.
even kids, on a high
Right.
school basketball team or something, no idea where this stuff came from.
Right.
That's the stuff
Yeah.
that's my heart and passion. Can we catch that stuff and prevent
Right.
that, you know?
Right. That stuff, those types of things, in my opinion, come from depletion.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
depletion of nutrients, depletion of minerals. That's
Exactly.
where those kinds of incidences are
Yeah.
popping up from. Um,
I think a lot of people rely on the fact that they're active and they exercise, that's going to
yep,
be their lifesaver, but that could not be further from the truth. It is
right.
definitely a piece of the puzzle, but
Yeah,
really the diet and other lifestyle factors are a much bigger piece of the puzzle.
right. Is there
So
any contraindication to doing this?
no, not at all. Mm-mm.
Okay,
Um, I mean, we can do it with people with pacemakers and stents and all those things as
right.
well. Okay.
So this would
Yeah.
be once a year if you're looking for it to be, proactive.
Yeah, I would say if you're relatively healthy, but you just want to make sure your heart is doing fine. Yes,
Yeah,
once a year is a great thing. Now, if you got some active disease processes going on, there's probably I know there's other things going on in the body too, because you cannot separate one part of your body from the other.
right.
They
We're
all
systemic human beings.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So those people, I would recommend them getting on a whole program with me,
Hmm.
and then definitely, working to get that heart working properly,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
as it could be the difference between life and death.
Absolutely. And that I do want to talk about being proactive too, because you're, like you said, you're seeing all these different people.
Yeah,
And so, can you talk about the importance of putting your health first and being proactive and how that comes into play with your practice versus, patients that haven't been taking steps, to be proactive with their health versus patients who clearly have, and just the
right.
differences between and what that means in the outcome.
Right. Oh my gosh, it's it's everything,
Yeah.
a person who walks in who has been trying to do stuff and being proactive, trying to make sure they eat well, they do exercise, they, are starting to take a look at, well, what is outside of my body that might be influencing our body? What do I put in, on, or around my skin, my body,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. That is just like 60% of the load off of my job if they come in that
Wow. 60%.
way,
That's
right? Okay. I do
that's a
is
good
start
chunk.
tweaking things. Like, oh, look, we'll just do this, we'll do this, and then, they're on their way very quickly, right?
Right.
Versus the person, not that there's never a too late. You could always come back in, but it's just much harder to work
Right.
when somebody, so they're a 55-year-old person coming in, they've lived a really, really hard life, haven't paid attention to much of that stuff. We got a lot more work to do.
Right.
Yeah, and it's going to take a lot longer as well.
Right.
So, it's prevention, again, it could be the difference between life and death,
Right.
There,
I think this is such an
yeah.
important part of the medical model because we do need a shift in the medical model,
Mhm.
in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion.
Yes.
Health practitioners, professionals. I mean, we talk about this quite a bit. Is that we need a shift in it where we're putting much more focus on being in prevention than
Yeah,
we are trying to clean up this giant mess
right.
after it's already happened. But we're just not, that's not the model right now. The model is let's clean up the mess when it gets bad. And so we have this attitude like, I'm doing fine, I'm doing fine, I'm doing fine until you're not.
Right.
And then when you're not, it's
It
your
then it's a
date.
right. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Then,
Yeah.
panic bells go off, and right. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to say that I think a lot of people take better care of their cars than they do
Yeah.
of their bodies, right? They go in,
Yes.
they get their, the oil change, they put oil in, they take it to the mechanic to make sure, they got their 70,000 mile, whatever. We do all these things to take care of something like a car, but they don't do anything to take care of their body.
Right.
And I think, really, is that car more important to you, really, in the long
Yeah.
run than your
Right. And I think a big
body?
thing.
Now, that's a simple. Oh, go ahead. Hmm.
Yeah, a big thing is, I don't want to have to pay out of pocket. I pay insurance every month, so I don't want to have to pay out of pocket. But what I think people aren't getting is that, you pay car insurance every month, like you were saying, but you're still paying to have your oil changed. You're still paying to have your car, your tires, new tires put on and whatnot. So that's a great analogy that you
Right,
use. But
right,
for some reason, it doesn't really, it's not hit there yet in the marketplace of health. And I can't wait till it does, because it's then when our insurance companies will be
right,
forced to make a change for us, because we should have the right to treat
right.
ourselves
Exactly.
the way we want to be treated.
Exactly. Yes. That you're absolutely right. And I tell people this a lot because I don't take insurance as well. Not even so much that I don't want to, it's just that nobody, those powers that be, would never recognize what I do as valid.
Right.
So, but you're going to pay the money one way or the other. If you don't do something preventative
Right.
to do something about your health, later on down the line, you will be paying the money one way or the other. So you can pay it now,
Absolutely.
preventative, or you can pay it later to manage disease. You're-
Right. It's a whole lot harder to pay it too when you're not feeling good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? Because then you may not be working. There's all these other factors that come into play. It's just,
Right.
I can't stress it enough, you know?
Right. Not to mention just your living day, your quality of life, even today, before you even get there, the amount of people who just come out going, I feel so much better. My energy is so much better. My clarity of mind and how I think is so much better.
Yeah.
All this stuff, which gives you energy, not only to do the things you have to do, but the things you want to do.
Right. It's a snowball effect once
Yeah.
you really get on that path. Like, I can only imagine when somebody takes a food out of their diet that's been an irritant for
Yeah.
many, many years, and
Right.
they finally figure that out, how much better they could
Yes.
be feeling in a pretty short amount of time.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the best teacher, then if they eat it again, they feel horrible. That's the best teacher. I don't have to do any nagging at that point.
Right.
Well, I'm glad you're not feeling good eating that,
Right.
That's it. Yeah, that's the
Right.
best teacher. So yeah, yeah.
Right, right. So that being said, what are three things that our listeners can do or focus on in terms of their health to kind of make shifts? What are three things that you would recommend if someone wants to get on track for health?
Yes, there's hmm, three. I I would say number one, eat whole, clean food. Okay, so when
Okay.
I talk about whole foods, clean foods, I mean when you look at that food, do you know what plant or tree or the ground or animal that food came from? Right? So it
Hmm.
wasn't created in a lab, in a factory, put into a package, and come out the other end. That's
Right,
processed. Okay.
right.
So you know exactly where that food came from. That's whole foods. Clean foods, eat organic or pastured meat as much as possible, as much as you can afford. Right.
Right.
So our foods are just dirty today. What they spray them with, chemicals and all kinds of things.
I just saw I had bought some whole sprouted English muffins the other day for my kids, and
Mhm.
there was a label on there that said that it was glyphosate free.
Ah, okay. How do you
It,
did
isn't
they
that
test it?
amazing? Uh,
Yes, I know.
like now we're labeling to tell you that your
Right.
food does not have glyphosate in
Glyphosate
it.
in it, right. But unfortunately, glyphosate is just one thing. When they
Yeah,
harvest wheat, they spray it with fungicides and not to mention the glyphosate and other things because it prolongs shelf life and it makes it easier to harvest and all this kind of stuff. And, it all kind of unfortunately comes down to the almighty dollar.
yeah.
But that's what we're eating, and it's maybe one time isn't going to hurt you, but when this is what we eat day in day out for years and years and years, it
Right.
stores in the body and it causes problems.
Right. And I
So
would say to our listeners too to do your research because I actually am from Canada. I'm born and raised in Canada and then moved to the States in my 20s. But I noticed a difference in the taste of food as soon as I moved here. And there are certain additives
uh,
that are illegal in Canada and they're legal here.
mhm,
So
yes,
certain dyes, certain additives, and it really changes the taste of the food. And that's something I'm suspicious of. Why is this illegal in several other countries,
countries,
but
but
it's legal here? And they make the same product. It's
right,
the same product, but they make it differently for that country because that country requires them not to have that additive in there.
right, yeah,
That's a
it's
red
it's a
flag to
long,
me.
yes, yeah, yeah, it's a big government agencies are in bed with each other. That's all I can say at this point.
Yeah.
So I
But I
just
mean, us as the consumer, I would just say having, listen to that and do your own research.
absolutely.
You can easily pull up lists of additives that are not permitted in other countries that
Exactly.
are in products here. And then when we start making our choices with our dollars,
Mhm.
we stop buying the stuff that we don't want,
Right.
they'll be forced to change. And I know
Exactly.
that's a long, long process,
Mhm.
but that ultimately will be the only way.
Yeah, that we speak their language, right?
Yes.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. You're right. And question, just because the FDA says it's something or your doctor says it's something, do your research. Is that
Yes.
really the case?
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
for sure. So eat clean foods,
I'm
whole
sorry.
foods. And what was the third one that
So
we?
eat clean whole food. Well, that was one.
Okay.
Number two, I would say is be mindful of what you put in, out, on, or around your body.
Oh, that's a
So
good
our
one.
skin is the largest organ of our body, and what
Yes.
hits our skin is in your bloodstream in about 45 seconds. So, think about your personal care products, your cleaning products,
Yes.
candles, scented
Mm-hmm.
anything, your makeup, hair dye,
Yep.
all this stuff. Think about that stuff. What I tell my patients is gradually start changing that stuff. So if
Yes.
you run out of something, then replace it with something natural. So when you look
Right.
at the label, you're reading the label. Do you know what those things are on that label? Do you know what all those things are? Great. Then that's probably a natural product and it's good. If it's a bunch of chemical words, you have no idea what it is, I would stay away from that, right?
Yeah.
So cleaning up that stuff. So organic, again, that's in your food, on your food, around our bodies, what we smell. Now, again, this is where some of the stuff like the exhaust from the cars and stuff, we can't control in and of ourselves. But what we do is we decrease the load that the body has to deal with.
Right.
Okay?
Which is such a great point because, yeah, you can't live in a bubble.
No,
but change what you can.
Change what you can, decrease the load, you know?
Yep.
So I would say that's number 2. And number 3 is, I would say, then I think some supplementation is probably necessary because our food, our soil is depleted, our food is depleted, and those kind of things. And there's just some nutrients we are just chronically deficient in.
Right.
Across the board.
Right.
And it would be the supplement. Things like vitamin D,
magnesium,
B complex, all of these. Zinc is another big one, which is also good for the heart.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess those would be my top 3.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's really good advice. And I think that's simple, that's simple. I can, if I start with 3 things, and I keep those in mind, I can, gradually over time make shifts and then come out, just feeling that much better.
Right. And then if you're stuck at that point and you feel like you need more help, people like me are all over the place.
Absolutely. And so where can people find, follow, connect with you?
Yes. So I have a website, www.restorative-nutrition-therapy.com. I have a Facebook group under the same name, and I have an Instagram under the same name. Wonderful. My address is 709 3rd Avenue, Suite 101 in the basement in Longmont.
Okay.
My business number is 303-532-1906. And you can reach me through all of those avenues. You can go check me out to see if this might be a good fit for you.
That sounds wonderful. And we will put your website in our show notes too, so that everyone will know how to contact you. Correct.
And then I have a couple specials going on as well. If you mention this podcast, I do an intense, almost 3-hour intake consultation when somebody comes on board to be a patient that I charge $150 for. If you mention this ad, I will give it to you for 50% off.
Oh, that's
so for $75. Nice. Yes. And then the heart sound recorder I was talking about, I do a heart health revitalization program, which is about 14 appointments for $300. But the first 10 people who call me about this will get it for $200.
Wow.
So that's the heart sound revitalization program. And then the last thing I wanted to mention that is that on January 6th, I believe it's January 6th, the first Monday of January, I'm starting a 21-day sugar detox support group, basically.
I love it.
We get sugar during the holidays, probably ate a little too much, and we need to do a bit of cleansing. And we want a supportive atmosphere to do that. I'm starting a group on January 6th, once a week for 4 weeks. And
excellent.
After, you'll have kicked the sugar habit and you'll feel so much better. So
that's great.
Yes. So I all 3 of those out at
I love it
today.
I love it. A support group.
Yeah.
You need it. It's a drug.
It's just yes, it's exactly that. It's a drug, and sometimes we just need a little accountability, right, and encouragement from other people who are also going through it with us.
Yep. And accountability is huge.
Yes, and lots of tips and tricks and recipes galore, and so.
Sounds fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for being on the Naturally Inspired podcast today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a delight.
Thank you. If the Naturally Inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.